What I've seen in the last 35, 40 years in the Virginia wine industry is a huge evolution of sharing information. Many industries and many wine areas as well, individual wineries don't share a lot. We started in the late 70s and all through the 80s and 90s to today, having wineries and growers and tasting rooms share information. And that allows us to make fewer mistakes. That is one of the great benefits in Virginia.
We'd like to welcome to today's episode of Wine Across America, Chris Pearmund and Mark Ward from Pearmund Cellars in Virginia. Guys, it's great to have you with us this morning. Why don't we start with where you're standing and a little bit about
that beautiful view behind you
and Virginia and Virginia wines and fire away. We're all ears.
Thanks. This vineyard was planted in 1976. We have started originally with 9 different types of grapes, Cabernet Franc, Chambourcin, all types of things. And those different varietals have been wound down to only growing Chardonnay. We have 14 clones of Chardonnay here, and it's coming up on 50 years old, and it's pretty good juice. The farm goes back to 1743. It was started as a tobacco farm, and then a apple orchard, and then a cattle milk production facility, 800 acres, and now it's a vineyard. We have learned to grow specific varieties on specific locations across Virginia in our 30 years of experience making and growing grapes to best highlight the terroir, the soils, aspects, slopes, elevations to really bring out classic wine varietals and styles with a Virginia accent. So we study and know Rieslings from Germany and Petit Manseng from Pyrenees Mountains and Cab Francs from Chinon to know what they're about and grow and make the best we can, not completely emulating the old world, but to have a Virginia accent on what should be high quality, classic worldwide wine.
That's perfect. And over these last 30 years, you must have had some successes and some disappointments in what you've planted, and you've ended up with what your current selection is. But where did your direction come from? Mainly France, or?
We started looking more at the West Coast and realized their idyllic weather is not ours. Even though this is idyllic, it's not always perfect. In 1996, we had a very, very difficult winter. We called it 1990 sucks. In 2018, it rained for all but 3 days in the summertime, it seems like. And 2018 became 2018. So we've learned to deal with weather, and their philosophy basically is to manage our vineyards and canopy for the worst case scenarios, manage for hurricanes, manage for problems. And when those problems arrive, we can make tolerable wine. But when those problems do not arise, we have spent 250 man-hours per acre really making a perfect vineyard that highlights what is possible with these varieties that basically, and with full respect, that the West Coast can't do, because we have different weather conditions, different intensities of sunlight. So we're trying to best focus on the old world techniques as small producers. We only make at our highlight about 25,000 cases a year, so we're not a big producer.
Well, I mean, it looks great today, but Thursday night we had 3 inches of rain. I think Saturday we got about another 3/4 of an inch, and it rained kind of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we're letting things dry out today.
And after a good rainstorm, the only thing you can do is drink beer.
Did the rain and everything, did that affect the beginning of your harvest?
It did impact some of it. We delayed a few things. If we've done our job up until this point, hopefully the grapes can withstand a little bit of that. The risk is, vines like anything else, they want to suck that water up. Mm-hmm. We run the risk of berries splitting at this point in time with that much rain. But so far we went into it, pretty clean this season. So I think we can withstand at least one of those events. maybe another one if we have to, but that's the type of thing that we deal with here on the East Coast that they don't necessarily always see on the West Coast is rains at this time when you don't want to see them.
So true.
All of our vineyards run north and south with vertical shoot positioning. We're fairly aggressive about leaf pulling. Right after bloom, we leaf pull on the east side to get full morning sun on the fruit. The west side is less aggressive on leaf pulling. We went through a second time and very aggressively leaf pulled after the summer heat stop, anticipation of these rains to help ensure a minimization of any broader disease or fungus.
Wow. So you're off and running. That's exciting. An amazing, exciting time in a vineyard right now.
Yeah, I think, we were supposed to receive our first fruit on Friday. It was, we thought it was going to be something that was going to come in. Numbers indicated that it was ripe. They picked it. Turns out that it wasn't, quite up to our standards. So decided to let it go. And so we were all excited, dressed up, ready to go on Friday, and kind of had to wait until today. So today was really our first day of harvest.
Yeah, today's the first day of harvest, and we still have fingernails. We haven't bit them all off yet, but the week's not over.
I'm so happy you could talk to us today. This is great. This is really great.
So it's our last day with collared shirts for about 2 months. Yes.
Yes.
Obviously, I did not get that memo. So guys, let's take a step back a little bit, because I think it's always interesting to learn a little bit about your own personal wine journeys. You've obviously been in this business for a very long time. How did you get started? What made you want to be in the wine business? Maybe you can share some of the background with us.
I kind of came to the wine business on a little bit of a circuitous route. Previous career was in accounting and information systems, but I worked in California for about 5 or 6 years. Kind of first fell in love probably with wine about 25 years ago. During that time, I started going back to school at Washington State for enology and viticulture. Did my first harvest in 13 in Oregon. Came to Virginia in 14 to intern here, and ended up moving into Virginia in 2015 full time, and kind of haven't looked back. So it's kind of a second career for me. Excited to be here. Wanted to be, kind of in Virginia's a new and exciting place, in relation to some of the other more established wine regions. And I kind of wanted to be part of that. So this is kind of where I landed.
Wonderful.
And Chris, how about yourself? I mean, you've been at this, as you've described, quite some time.
Well, we're thrilled to have Mark with us. When he came on a 3-month internship, and now it's been 10 years, he's brought a lot of depth, a lot of focus. Opened his own vineyard on his farm that he purchased with his wife. So we're thrilled with all the quality and focus that we're doing. I started off in my career in the 1980s working in restaurants. I was chef and then became front of house and focusing on wines, because restaurants that had good wine list had better income and prettier girls. And then that evolved to a high focus on wine into the retail side. I got into winemaking 35 years ago. With a 2-year commitment to myself to learn everything in the vineyard, everything in the wine production cycles, to understand that facet, and then continue on into opening up my own restaurants. The Virginia wine industry and the wine industry in general is a unlimited bucket of depth of knowledge. After having every hat in the industry, in the distribution side, in retail and restaurant, in wholesale, in the politics and state associations, winemaking, grape growing, not tired, not done yet. And they still allow me to come to work and work with these guys who are very good and passionate about trying to do the next good thing in the Virginia wine industry. There's only about 300 wineries in Virginia. And of all the wine sold in Virginia, only about 6% is Virginia wine. So we look at that as an opportunity. If the wine industry were to grow 25 or 30% from what it is today, we're still a single-digit entity as far as wine consumption in Virginia. So I consider that a great opportunity.
So Sandra, I don't know about you, but all of this
Talk about wine.
we gotta try
We
some.
would like to taste some wine.
Yeah, so you
Taste some wine.
to send us 4 varietals. Tell us where you'd like to start.
Yeah, what should we start with? And are you going to be joining us? I hear you may be moving to a little tasting area.
Yeah, we can move down to a little tasting area and perhaps let's start with the rosé. It's not just for breakfast.
While you guys work your way there, we have the bottle right here.
Great.
And, you guys work your way. You can start talking to us about the rosé while we pour. You can catch up.
Awesome. Perfect. So today we are processing Chambourcin from our estate vineyard out at Effingham. Looks a beautiful fruit. It's 21 bricks, pH of about 3.3. So kind of just where we like it. What we're doing is we're going to be destemming this fruit, kind of removing it from the rachis so that we can put it in the press, squeeze it. And we're going to let a portion of this sit on the skins for about an hour. The first half that we processed earlier this morning, we immediately put in the press and let on the skins. The reason we're kind of splitting that is we're trying to get a little bit of texture from the skins, but not too much. Also, we're trying to extract a little bit of color. And one of the differences with Chambourcin in making rosé is that Chambourcin is one of 3 Teinturier varieties. And what that means is in most red grapes, the color comes from the skins. So you want a little bit of skin contact to extract the color. But Chambourcin, as you can see, is very dark, actually has a red flesh to it. So there's color in both the skins and the flesh. And so if you leave it too much in contact with the skins, you can end up with a red wine. And we're looking for something that's kind of that nice pale, from pale coral to a little bit of pink. So it's going to get a little bit loud here once we turn the machine on. But you can see we're going to dump it into the hopper.
Got it.
Kind of zoom in here. Basically, what's happening is the machine is taking the grapes, it's feeding the paddles against a screen, and basically the grapes and the juice are coming out here, and the rachis is coming out on the back end. So we're removing all the green part, green staining bits that we don't want, so that we're left with basically just juice and skins.
That's great.
First group, 2024, first pressing of about 200 tons we'll do this year. Pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
If everything is like this, in 6 weeks, we got it rocking on.
Awesome.
Like this? Oh, okay, good. You get 3 pizza when it's like this, you know? Don't look for you.
See right here, this is the juice that we're processing. So it's got a little bit of that pale pink color. That's why we're going to leave part of it a little bit in contact with the skins to darken it up just a little bit so that the finished product ends up looking like what's in your glass.
How long will the contact with the skin be? You said
so this that's processed, or this that was processed this morning, was basically about as long as I could put it in the press, squeeze it, which is about an hour. Mm-hmm. The rest of it, I'm going to let sit for about an hour and a half in contact with the skins before I put it in the press to separate the juice.
Great.
Got it. Thank you. You're teasing us. We're doing everything but what we came for.
So, you guys got some rosé?
We do.
We certainly do. So
this is from Effingham Winery, one of our sister wineries. Over the years, I've opened up, 18 wineries, and we have 3 in our family right now of management, winemaking, and similar ownership. We have business partners. And so Effingham is near Manassas, Virginia, Northern Virginia, 25 minutes from here. We're at Pearmund Cellars right now. We also have Vint Hill Craft Winery, which is also open to the public, but a winemaking school. And we'll talk about these 3 wineries a little independently as well. Rosé has certainly taken off the last 15, 20 years in this country as a dry, clean wine of Provence style, which hopefully you find that style in your glass. Lovely summer wines. You have the 2023 vintage, which I believe got a nice award last month.
We did?
Yeah, it was best rosé in the country and the New York International Wine Competition, which means some judges liked it. I hope you do too.
So it's delicious. So if you wouldn't mind repeating the award, whose award was it, and what did you get?
So this would have been New York International. Basically, I think they got a gold medal at New York.
Yeah, double gold medal and best rosé in the competition
That's awesome.
at the New York International Wine Competition.
I just want to say the color is really unique. It's beautiful. It's not too much to the pink. It's definitely got like a salmony hue to it. And that's basically from the Chambourcin grape, right? I mean that you're mostly Chambourcin, a little Sauvignon Blanc, a little Viognier.
Correct. So what I try to do with that is, we use Chambourcin as the backbone. We'll blend in a little bit of the Sauv Blanc and the Viognier. The Viognier I'm trying to use for a little bit of aromatics and texture. The Sauv Blanc as needed, kind of for the vibrant citrus, a little bit of acid. Going for something with a lot of texture. Aiming for something that's old world. But also, trying to use what we do well here on the East Coast to make a nice, rosé for the summer.
This has an old world feeling to me.
It really does. I mean, we drink a lot of rosés from Provence.
Yes.
And
I love the texture in it. So the fruit, if you look at this wine compared to one of southeastern France and Provence, that area, we're going to have probably a little bit more color. We don't use the Grenache grape here, which is harder to get color out of. We have a lot of texture, a lot of minerality to it, and a little bit more fruit. So probably a bit more powerful than the average wines of Provence, maybe going towards Tavel or something, maybe more than that. But we're not as big as some of the big California ones.
Bright fruitiness to it, but it's but the acidity from the other part really balances it out. Beautiful. I'm a big rosé fan, so
can you?
It'll stand up to good Chesapeake Bay seafood.
Tell us a little bit about the Effingham label and the drawing on the label itself. Is that the Effingham Manor, I take it?
The Effingham Manor is a 250-year-old plantation that we purchased about 8 years ago and made into a winery. Open to the public every day, and we are representing a lot of Virginia's colonial history on the property and making some good wines. It's a lot of fun.
Amazing.
And other varietals coming out of Effingham besides the rosé that we're enjoying?
No, we only grow Chambourcin at Effingham for this and a late harvest port style, LBV port style wine we make with that fruit as well.
Oh, lovely.
Just to put it in perspective, Chris mentioned a Grenache rosé. I happen to make one of those for Vint Hill Craft Winery. When we make that, that's something that I'll leave in contact with the skins generally overnight, 16 to 18 hours to get that pale color. Again, we talked about this wine. This is something with Chambourcin. I'm leaving in contact for about an hour just to compare and contrast.
That's amazing.
Mark and his winemaking team make about 80 different wines a year. We make a lot of wines for Pearmund Cellars, Vint Hill, and Effingham. We also make some wines at a winemaking school that Mark manages, as well as for some other breweries and other wineries that we do custom crush for. So the opportunity is we can work with a lot of vineyards across the state. We work with a couple in California as a small production to have grapes available from a small grower of things we don't have on the East Coast, like Zinfandel, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, some of the Rhones that we like to play with. Otherwise, we're about 98% Virginia of what we grow ourselves on about 80 acres total.
And so we're going to ask this question with all of the wines that we taste. Where can our listeners buy this delicious rosé?
We have limited distribution in Virginia. If you go to effinghammanor.com, we're happy to send you some wine. I believe we ship to 38 states. And if you're in one of the few states that cannot receive the wine, I'll gladly drink a bottle, give you notes, and send you an empty bottle with a T-shirt.
Perfect. Well, on that note, we're going to go to a very quick commercial break with one of our sponsors, and then we're going to come back and start on the second wine.
Great.
See you in a minute.
For Toomey, nothing is ever quite finished. It can always be evolved. Introducing the latest evolution of Toomey, the aluminum backpack and briefcase from the 19-degree aluminum collection. Toomey reimagined these everyday essentials in aircraft-grade aluminum with contours sculpted at precise 19-degree angles. Carry the aluminum backpack and briefcase from Toomey to perfect journeys near or far. Shop Toomey's full 19-degree aluminum in stores and online at toomey.com.
Back with wine number 2. Why don't you
So
tell us about, first of all, what this wine is and this gorgeous label?
So, so one of the things that's kind of unique about Vint Hill Craft Winery is it's located in a historic building, which is monitoring station number 1, which is actually second monitoring station was on the coast in California, but it was basically a covert listening post during World War II. Where we basically monitored and intercepted communications from Germany and Japan during the war. And so in an effort to kind of honor some of that history, a lot of our labels have pinup girls from that era. So what we're going to be drinking is actually Vivian, our Viognier. So we've got a graphic artist that works on all of these beautiful labels. And Vivian is actually one of our favorites.
Beautiful.
We have about 19 different labels of pinup girls that are Americana taken from World War II aircraft. And the entire winery has a very aggressive, a very dominant theme of World War II history and Cold War.
Wow.
Interesting. We're actually going to be interviewing the winemaker and owner of a winery in Washington State in a couple of weeks. That's called Airfield Estates, and they're actually their main buildings were all airplane hangars for Army Air Corps training missions during the Second World War. So they have a similar sort of historical bent. So I kind of love that. I'm a big history lover, and this is very, very exciting to me. So why don't we go ahead and taste Viognier?
So again, and can I ask, so your inspiration, first of all, to grow a Viognier, just that you felt that your region, your area, it was going to be a perfect fit. I'm passionate about Viognier, so I'm interested about your decision to grow this wine.
So quick tie-in to Airfield Estates is in my studies at Washington State. I've actually helped bottle at Airfield Estates back when I was in school. So I've been there many times. Great winery.
Yeah, I've been there as well. I had an office in Sunnyside and worked in Prosser in the wine industry off and on about 10 years ago. And it's a beautiful part of the country, and they make some awesome wines. It's a lovely winery there.
Awesome. Great to know.
Yeah. So Viognier is one of those things that has been in Virginia since we've started making wine here. As people experimented with it, as you know, it originated in the Rhone Valley. Because and one of the things that they thought that it would do well here is it has a little bit thicker skins. So the hope that it would stand up and resist some of the disease pressure that we have with the humidity and the So in terms of, trying to make this wine, if you think about, kind of the texture and the beauty that is, the wines in the Rhone Valley, you think about the ripeness that you get in California with some of the Viogniers and Paso Robles and other areas. We're trying to get some of that ripeness, but then also get some of the texture that they have. But we end up with something a little bit probably in the middle of the two. This is a Viognier that we ferment in stainless steel, but then we age in a combination of acacia barrels and neutral French oak for about 9 to 10 months. So you're kind of getting that combination of floral, a little bit of citrus, and then aiming for some of that viscosity and body that you would expect from a Viognier.
With our vineyards that run north and south and more aggressive leaf pulling, the fruit hangs in the sun a lot more. In California and West Coast, and sometimes have a hard time with the berries getting sunburned. And looking at how they grow grapes in Condrieu with a gobelet or different trellis or non-trellis systems, having Viognier hang in the sun, I think, is very important to develop much softer and more impactful texture in the wine. We have started in the early 90s with whole cluster pressing and trying to make the fruit clean. And we've learned that, letting some little skin contact is really nice, and trying to bring up not power, but complexity and the differentiation from first impression, mid palate, and finish in texture, aromatics, and the palate as well. Trying to bring up a really lovely wine. We look at the wines of Condrieu, in La Guigal, La Dorian, and some of the great producers, and try to understand how they grow, how they make and emulate where we can, and make it very, very different than Chardonnay as well.
So it's interesting. I get the citrus, but it's got a really velvety feel on the tongue. It's got just a softness, and I love it.
I do. I love the floral notes in this. That's just always the minute it comes into my sinuses, and I smell white flowers, classic with the Viognier. I love that. But it has a really nice mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And how much are you producing of this? I think we had the information, but.
Well, Viognier, you want it different than Chardonnay. I think of Viognier is kind of like Chardonnay that went to the islands for a summer vacation and came back with a tropical attitude.
A little fresher, little yeah.
It's just a lovely wine, and it really goes well with tropical foods. If you throw a little mango, little pineapple or something with a citrus, as well as those different flavors, and not using oak, which we know French oak and Chardonnay go so well together. This is a completely different animal with not being sweet and still a great dinner wine.
Yeah, delicious. It's
very light. I mean, it's light in terms of oak influence. In fact, there's almost no new oak on this. You're talking more into the acacia and neutral French oak. So really trying to stay away from the wood influence and kind of let the fruit speak for itself.
And I think you've accomplished that.
Yeah.
I think it's, like I said, really, really soft on the tongue. So once again, same question. Where can our listeners buy Vint Hill, not just the Viognier, but others as well?
Covert Wineworks.
So similar to previous, you can get this wine at Vint Hill locally, or you can order it online at vinthillcraftwinery.com.
Vint Hill Craft Winery was opened in 2009 as a public winery, but also a winemaking school, which it still is. So we make many, many small production lots, making one barrel at a time, a couple barrels at a time. It's not designed for large distribution. It's designed for having a lot of cool factors in wine understanding, rather than going to a winery and tasting a Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier and Chardonnay. When we first opened that winery, we would ask you, what do you want to taste? If you want to taste Chardonnay, we'll have 5 or 6 different Chardonnays to taste, and talk about Chardonnay production, how the grapes are grown, and what the winemaking influences can be. And we would say, if you want to taste Cabernet Franc, here's 5 or 6 different Cabernet Francs that we make here that are from different vineyards, different winemaking processes, trying to come up with what is capable and potentially wonderful about these different grape varieties. So we really take that as a lead, as a differentiator with the winery itself, rather than just one of each grape variety as a blend.
I love that you're such a great education source for people that want to know more. And there's such so much room for that in the United States. Everybody coming in and learning more about wine.
Yeah. We take our wine drinking very seriously.
It's also a combination of, if you look at the different wineries, Vint Hill is the smallest of the 3. Probably on average, everything I make there is about 100 cases. So, we're really talking about 4 barrels of this wine. So it's limited production. As Chris mentioned, it's a teaching winery. So I teach home winemaking there generally in the winter, where people can make, 2 cases of wine with me, as well as I have people that also make half barrels and barrels of their own wine. So it's really a combination of production winery on one hand, but then also teaching winery on the other.
Very, very, very cool. So we have 2 more wines that we're going to taste. Why don't we let you guys sort of drive the bus here? Where are we going next?
Petit Verdot. Petit Verdot is one of the grapes that Virginia does very well with. I would say Petit Verdot, Viognier, Petit Manseng, Cabernet Franc, and Tannat. and Chamberson are wines that have a great longevity, a good pedigree, hold their own economically as a finished wine. And quite honestly, West Coast doesn't do well because of the climatological differences. Petit Verdot, petit meaning small berry, Verdot meaning green, and it's the last grape to go through veraison in a field blend or mixed field. So as a late harvesting wine, it has a lovely dark color. It's a small berry like Cabernet Sauvignon. So you have a high skin to juice ratio. You have a high amount of seeds per gallon or per liter. You end up with a fairly dense wine mustering fermentation. So your yield of gallons per ton is fairly light. We can get 120, 130 gallons per ton, where in a rosé we might get 170 gallons per ton. So there's a lot more material during fermentation to make the wine more powerful. As a single varietal, it tends to be very dark and brooding, a little leathery sometimes, a wine with good aging potential. Our 2007 is still probably the best drinking Petit Verdot that we have right now at 20, however many, 15, 18 years old. It shows well for Virginia. Most places in the world don't grow Petit Verdot as a standalone varietal. We have it as a backbone of a lot of our blends and one of our favorite reds, I think, across the state, as well as Cabernet Franc, which is a completely different animal.
Right.
So it is a late harvest, but yet the alcohol content is not so intense for being a later harvest.
Yeah. So this, I think Chris alluded to this. This is generally the last fruit we receive every year. Generally comes in late October, sometimes even early November if we can let it hang that long. The past couple of years have been pretty good growing seasons in Virginia. And so we've gotten some beautiful Petit Verdot, in 21, 22, 23. And we're hoping 24 is going to be pretty similar.
It's always fun to have Petit Verdot and Petit Manseng in wine competitions where you have the more traditional West Coast and international varieties. And these varieties don't take up much shelf space or space on a wine list. And in wine judging, they have a lot to offer, and they have a nice differentiator of texture and palate. And we always do great in wine competitions with them. And I think more and more sommeliers are very respectful, and they have a great pedigree, great heritage as well. These wine grapes that we're drinking are maybe not as commonplace in a grocery store, but certainly have hundreds of years of respect in wine geekdom.
That's true, and in converting people into wine geekdom, your vineyard going there might be their first stop at even experiencing Petit Verdot, because it isn't really well represented on wine lists and in restaurants. And so another educational opportunity I think you guys are embracing.
Yeah, Virginia's number one grape variety, and the United States' number one grape variety is Chardonnay. Yeah. But in Virginia, actually Cabernet Franc has taken over Chardonnay by acreage and gallons of wine cases produced. So we are, as a state, drinking what we make and learning how to best accentuate our accent, if you will, of terroir onto a world stage of what Cabernet Franc or Viognier can be at its best.
So if I'm not mistaken, there are, though, multiple AVAs within the state of Virginia. So can you talk a little bit about those? You mentioned Effingham was up north, Manassas, basically the suburban DC area, Vint Hill and Pearmund. What are the different characteristics of the different wine growing regions within the state itself?
Yeah, Virginia, when we started in the 1970s, a modern day, we learned a lot. In the 1990s, learned more about how to grow, how to make, what to grow, where to grow it, how to make the wines. AVAs, especially I think in Virginia, out of full respect, are more of a marketing rather than a regionality. There are certainly huge regional differences in Virginia from the Eastern Shore, Central Virginia, Albemarle County, Northern Virginia, Loudoun County, Fauquier, Prince William, that have topography differences, soil differences, elevation differences. But I think there's a lot more about a regional place. Elevation in Virginia has a large impact. If you're above 600-foot elevation, is really the best place to start growing grapes in Virginia when you get away from red clay soils, unless you're growing a few individual places. The vineyard aspect, tasting more north or south or east or west, has a big impact. There's a lot of things regionally that do have impact, but I think the AVAs have not evolved to be dictatorially unified into a style, and more of a region of Shenandoah Valley makes some beautiful, beautiful wines at higher elevation. And Virginia is really been focusing recently, the last decade or so, into growers that are winemakers and being growers first. And I think that's put Virginia really on the map as what we're capable of as a bottle of wine worthy of 30, 40, 50 bucks a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
Absolutely.
So we're down to our very last.
Our last wine,
today.
but we have one quick break while we reset and get our next wine ready, which I'm really excited to taste. So we'll be right back with our last wine with you.
Venue Magazine is timely and timeless. Contemporary art and design, food and wine, architecture, motoring, yachting, music and film, and more. Find it all at venuemagazine.com.
All right, we're back with our last wine, and I'm really excited because the label on here is quite intriguing. Code of Support Foundation, and it's a secret blend. So you have to give us a good story with this one.
Well, if I told you what's in it, I'd have to kill you.
Okay.
I'll just point out Chris can't really tell you what's in it because I'm the only one that knows.
Mark won't tell me.
And that's honest. The honest truth, he doesn't know what's in it.
We started this about 10 years ago when Code of Support evolved. There's many great military organizations that help where the government kind of stops. And as a former military person, and a lot of people in the Washington, D.C. area are and across the country, we're very proud of our people in uniform. So we make what we feel is our best wine for the people who do their best in uniform, mostly special forces. So if we can make our best wine and not tell you anything about it, our best people in uniform generally can't tell you what they do either. So this wine is our 8th mission. We're on our 10th or 11th mission now, and each mission is basically, you can think of it as a vintage. But sometimes we will do different things with different grape varieties, different aging programs, different vintages blending together. We don't tell you anything about this wine other than we strive for this to be our best, the best training and best resources that we have, and give a portion of the proceeds to Code of Support Foundation for all that they do in helping our military members and families who have extra needs past what the government's able to provide. So Black Ops is special to us.
So each year it's unique. Each year this bottle is completely unique.
Correct. And
the blend is different every year. We don't start with anything intentional in mind. We're just trying to make the best wine we can in that vintage. So there really aren't any rules in terms of what we can do with it. We don't have a predefined, blend that we're aiming for. We're basically trying to take the best fruit we can and make the best wine just to, honor the military in the area.
So do you find that the sort of the mystery of the blend is something that, helps the marketing of it, the sales?
Well, the history of the blend, our first vintage was 2 years of barrel aged, and we made 4 barrels. And the second year, we had a couple of barrels that were 1 year old, a couple of barrels that were 2 year old, being that was a non-identified, non-vintage blend. And then we've evolved from there to make the wine more complex in texture, aroma, varietals, vineyard sourcing to make something that is very complex and appreciated by anybody who likes a nice glass of red wine. You don't need to be a wine snob to appreciate it, but the more you know about wine complexity, the more you appreciate this wine. And it's also a wine we do not put in a wine competition. The best in our military and our military in general are not in competition. They have a different mantra. So this wine is never in competition. It's not about comparing against others. It's about comparing of the respect and doing the best we can do for those who serve.
What a great sort of pedigree, right? I mean, to me, it just feels like a wine that would pair extremely well with food. What are your thoughts on the right pairings for this particular year's vintage?
Can you repeat that, please?
I was just asking about food pairings as it would relate to this particular blend.
This is significantly different than the Petit Verdot. It really is more plush. It really has just a lot more of a leathery background, or it's, the bigger the food, the bigger the wine, right? So, but this particular vintage must have a particular food or cheese pairing that you think would be really spectacular with this.
Well, I mean, I think, with a wine that's this big, but yet velvety, I think there's a lot of different things that you could do with it. Certainly, something, with a little bit heavier in terms of fat, whether it be, a steak on the grill, perhaps some lamb would be fantastic. If I had to go with a cheese, I'd probably go with perhaps something a little smoky, maybe a smoked Gouda, or even perhaps a Manchego would be fantastic.
On point.
And a big wine like this can certainly go with a lot of big things. So
we were wondering where you went. Now we got the answer. So
as the military says, sometimes size matters.
Well, I will say, as a daughter of a veteran, I love what you're doing with this wine.
Absolutely. So guys, just a little bit about sort of the state of affairs in Virginia winemaking these days. We hear from wineries all over the country that they're facing certain challenges. Let's kind of wrap with sort of your thoughts on where the wine business is today and what you see kind of coming down the pike in the future.
What I've seen in the last 35, 40 years in the Virginia wine industry is a huge evolution of sharing information. Many industries and many wine areas as well, individual wineries don't share a lot. We started in the late 70s and all through the 80s and 90s to today, having wineries and growers and tasting rooms share information. And that allows us to make fewer mistakes. That is one of the great benefits in Virginia, I think many wine regions. Our our challenge today is our labor in the vineyard is expensive and many hours, at about 250 man hours to 300 man hours per acre. Therefore, our costs per ton are close to $3,000 a ton average. So our wines are expensive from an agricultural perspective. Mm-hmm. Our wineries are in Virginia, sell most wine at the cellar door, so people come and visit us. But what we've evolved to be is more of a destination consumption place rather than for people to take wines home with them. So as alcohol has changed in consumption patterns in the last 5 years since COVID, restaurants have evolved to be like wineries in sharing food plates and in sharing flights of wine and being much more intellectual with wine availability. Breweries have wines that we make for breweries. Wineries have beer. We have draft beer. So as wineries become all to more people, breweries, restaurants become all to more people, and there is a homogenization about what we offer. Wineries have food, as do we, and that makes it more challenging for people to remember that we're an agricultural entity making large volumes of wine. And actually, our bread and butter isn't about consumption on premise. It's about people to take wine home with them.
Right.
And that's becoming more and more challenging to get people to take 3 packs or a case of wine home with them to keep our business sustainable.
Do you have wine clubs for each of these vineyards?
We have over 2,000 people in our wine clubs, I think 2,400 people, and that is a huge savior for us. It represents between 25 and 30% of our business, and that is probably our most important asset as a winery. Distribution is difficult.
For people to join.
Grapes, very difficult. Making wine is a lot of fun, and selling wine is business.
Yes.
Yeah, understood. So one question about the clubs: is there a club construct where somebody can purchase from all of the different labels, or are they specific to each of the wineries?
Yeah. So each of the wineries has their own website that you could purchase either individual bottles or join their web club or their wine clubs on site. So you could go out to either Vint Hill Craft Winery, PearmundCellars.com, or EffinghamManor.com. The other thing that I just like to add from I think the wine industry is challenging across, not just Virginia, but all across the country. But as Chris mentioned, the thing that we have here in Virginia is it is very collaborative. It continues to be. We have resources on the winemaking standpoint. We have the Winemakers Research Exchange that I participate in with winemakers from all across the state, where we taste each other's wines, we give feedback, we conduct experiments, and it's an opportunity that we all succeed together, or we fail together. And recently, the Centerville Monticello AVA basically won AVA of the year, and that's in the world. So, I think Virginia is making a name for itself, not only within the United States, but kind of beyond our borders slowly. But we're trying to get there.
Awesome. Well, guys,
And a classified Bordeaux, second growth Bordeaux, bought a local winery here very recently. And as Virginia matures, with our 400-year history, our maturation has only really evolved the last 2 decades. I think Virginia will continue to make high-quality world stage wines, not in volume, but I think in our price point, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks a bottle, we're very, very competitive and very much worth that when you compare at that price range and what we do with other regions of the world.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you guys. You've been incredibly generous with your time today. Good luck with the harvest. You've also been incredibly generous with your wines, and this is the part of the show where Sandra and I will go off camera and wrestle over who's taking what home with them. There's a pretty good chance that she's going to win. So just to let you know, but thank you so much. We appreciate it a lot, and we look forward to drinking more of your wine going forward.
And we'll have all the information available to everybody listening and watching for where they can purchase everything. So congratulations on your harvest and such beautiful wines. What a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you both.
Cheers.
Drink up. We'll make more.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So
This
those
is really
guys were
fun.
interesting, huh?
They were very interesting. And the whole thing I love about all of this, about what we're doing and talking to people, is you get a real feel for Virginia talking to them. It's just beautiful, but the history of that area and what an agricultural place they started as tobacco, they ended up into dairy, and then they end up in wine. It's just amazing. In 30 years.
It's remarkable to me when you think about it. What a perfect spot for us to start.
Yes.
In that Virginia is truly the birthplace of wine.
The beginning
in
of
America,
wine in America.
Thanks in great part to Thomas Jefferson.
Absolutely.
And so what a fun way to start this series.
And they brought that history into all of their wines. The Effingham, this is the historical, 1767
Right.
is the home that's there. That's, beautiful. And they're using a really incredible French varietal that is, which was very different. It's different in philosophy and in winemaking from the south of France, but it had an old world feel to it.
Exactly.
To me, it didn't feel like a fruity American version of a rosé. It was crisp. It had fruit. I loved it.
Then we have the covert with what a story.
Yeah, great story with the pinup girls and
the World War II connection, amazing. And then the Petit Verdot from Pearmund, and then of course the mystery blend.
The mystery code of support foundation.
What a great story. So
really to dedicate so much to one wine every year. That's really an amazing dedication.
that was fun.
Yeah.
Now we can truly arm wrestle over who's taking which bottles. Thanks so much.
It was
We look
great.
forward to seeing you guys on our next episode.
Please remember to subscribe to Wine Across America on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.